good afternoon to everyone who joined. Welcome to this online webinar and roundtable on the IoT Day. This is a meeting or webinar series that is organized by the DOS project every year. So it's the second time for the DOS project. And I would like to welcome all the speakers and, of course, all of the participants that would like to hear about the latest research result in IoT supply chain security to ensure compliance with the Cyber Resilience Act. Today, we have a program with 7 speakers from 7 projects that you can see here. So we have a presentation from each project of the 7 project: RESCALE, Emerald, Telemetry, DOS, CERTIFY, TARDIS, and FLUIDOS, where you can get insights on the latest research of these projects, since they are running now, I think, for half of the project runtime. And in the end, we will have a panel discussion. So I think it would be a very interesting webinar for most of you. So you will learn a lot of how to, which techniques and methodologies you can apply to ensure compliance with the Cyber Resilience Act. I think a topic that is, since the CRA is now adopted and rules take into force next year, very interesting for most organizations across Europe. So we hope that you can also enjoy and learn a lot from these presentations. So we are happy to have all these speakers here. And in order to make the webinar as smooth as possible, we have on the one hand a recording of the webinar. So if you would like to hear any presentations you could not hear or would like to follow up anything, you can simply access the recording of this webinar after the webinar on the project of the DOS website, where you, for instance, registered for that webinar. In order to organize also your questions, this Zoom webinar provides you at the bottom of the screen a Q&A tool in which you can enter any question you have when they arise. So don't hesitate and just use the tool directly when questions come to your mind during the presentations. We will collect them, and later on in the panel discussions, we will answer these questions to the speakers and have in the end a panel discussion with all of these speakers. So I would like to thank you first for your attendance and also for your willingness to present your project results here. I think, Anna, we have also prepared one poll for the audience that would be interesting to hear from your side. What do you think about the Cyber Resilience Act? So I hope we can show it now up.
Yes, András can start it.
So it's a question to the audience, but also to the speakers. So what is, from your perspective, the most relevant impact of the Cyber Resilience Act on IoT supply chain security? So you can select one of these answers. I think we have 7 answers. So from increased pressure on manufacturers, over stronger enforcement of security by design and by default principles, until unsure, it's too early to tell right now for you. So we would appreciate to hear your opinion on that, to get a feeling about that, and maybe your opinion on that question or your answer to that question may change after you have heard all the presentations. But for now, it would be interesting, I think, for all of us to get a first impression on what the feelings are with respect to the Cyber Resilience Act. Okay, so I hope you can all see this poll and hopefully answer this as well. As I said, we have 7 speakers from 7 projects and in the end, a panel discussion. So we start with the first presentation from the research project RESCALE that is about advancing secure supply chain for cyber resilience. The speaker is Alan Barnett. He's senior research scientist from Dell Technologies, and he will now show the presentation about his project. Alan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Martin. Delighted to be here today. So, as Martin already mentioned, I am a research scientist with Dell Technologies. I'll just share the RESCALE presentation, which has been prepared. So you should have the presenter view now of the RESCALE presentation. So yes, I've already introduced myself. I'm a researcher based in Ireland working for Dell Technologies. And I'm here today on behalf of the RESCALE Horizon Europe research project. Today I'm going to share how RESCALE contributes to securing supply chains in an area that's increasingly important for regulatory efforts such as the Cyber Resilience Act, and is particularly relevant to the IoT ecosystem. So what is RESCALE? So the RESCALE project develops methodologies and tools to validate and assure security across all stages of the digital supply chain. So it's not exclusively focused on IoT, but it does directly address the same or many similar technical problems the CRA seeks to regulate and can be applied to the IoT space. So you can see an overview here of the consortium. We have 11 countries, we have 15 partners, there's a variety, SMEs, large multinationals, we have representation of academia also in the consortium. So, and the CRA and why it matters for IoT. So, as many of you probably already know, it's a proposed EU regulation setting a baseline cybersecurity requirement for digital products, including connected devices, and it aims to ensure the security through the product life cycle, and that's from design to market, and hopefully will address growing threats. So RESCALE addresses several issues, several key requirements really introduced by the CRA. So there's a secure by design, there's vulnerability handling as well in the project, the presence of software bill of materials, and for example, the CRA specifically requires manufacturers to produce an SBOM that accompanies the product, so a software bill of materials to accompany the product. And on supply chain security challenges, so you have, for example, use of untrusted, poorly vetted third-party components, open source software upstream, which can introduce vulnerabilities into the product development lifecycle. It could be sourced globally from other geographies. Obviously, may contain vulnerabilities, malicious code even, and as was seen in the case with the SolarWinds and the, I believe, Ripple 20 events. So many devices rely on binaries. The binaries are often a black box. You don't know, what went in terms of visibility to the code base. So it makes vulnerability detection, patching quite difficult. And opaque firmware means the code isn't easily understood. It could be proprietary, it could be obfuscated, and often it's pre-compiled before the user gets it. And not all supply chain actors perform the same level of static and dynamic analysis, and it can lead to gaps in assurance where you don't have a cohesive level of trust across the different components. There's also limited traceability and component provenance difficulties as well in tracing the origins, modification histories of, for example, hardware or software, which again increases kind of supply chain vulnerabilities and supply chain risks. And many of the challenges that make IoT supply chains vulnerable are very similar to generic supply chain, and thus being handled on the RESCALE project. So we have an architecture diagram here. So I'll quickly walk through. We have this idea that, for example, external Git repos, the code is brought into the assessment domain first of all. And what happens in the assessment domain is that static security analysis is conducted on the code base dynamic security analysis is conducted on the binary. Once these are produced, they go to the management module. I'm not going to discuss every subcomponent in excruciating detail, but what happens from here really is we generate a TBOM, trusted bill of materials. And at each step, there would be the generic kind of integrity and identity, cryptographic fundamentals, to ensure that the SSCG, meaning the static supply chain guarantee, and the DSCG, dynamic supply chain guarantee, weren't tampered with. We can identify who generated these, meaning if you have community-driven generations. And what happens is that those feed in as, you may call them attestations or I suppose subcomponents, but they are part of this TBOM, Trusted Bill of Materials, which is an SBOM that we are adding a layer of security and trust to. The TBOM generation obviously is dependent on those two documents, but there's also security assurance, which is really after the TBOM gets generated, the security assurance, excuse me, the security assurance mechanism will have ingested the list of components present in the TBOM, which are really just the components from the SBOM. And that security assurance mechanism, it automatically checks the online vulnerability repos such as NIST for new vulnerabilities to do with those components. And thus that trusted bill of materials will have a continuously updating vulnerability status. And the last bit I'll describe is at the bottom. The trust storage here is it's underpinned by a blockchain. And the idea is that at each step as well of the TBOM production process, the hashes, the relevant material can be saved to the blockchain immutably. So in this way, we aim to create this trusted bill of materials. And that's the cornerstone of the RESCALE project, really. All tools sort of aim towards supply chain security by design. And ourselves in Dell, we actually run the work package which has spec'd out and is implementing this TBOM. So there's I suppose I've gone into some of this already, but the static code analysis and dynamic testing, obviously you have the code base, you have the executables, those are the targets there. But in the latter half of the project, because we're about halfway through RESCALE now, I think it's we've just entered month 19. It will also cater to low-level system analyses and the actual hardware components as well. So this is also a target of the RESCALE project to address. So here we have another diagram. This one breaks down what exactly the TBOM is. Some of you may be already familiar with the kind of specifications used for an SBOM or a HBOM, meaning the hardware bomb. So Cyclone DX is the one we selected here. We're also aware SPDX is a very popular spec as well. So we're looking at that for some interoperability, but the current one has been implemented in Cyclone DX. And so I suppose the ones where the arrows denote are what I'll explain. So you have a generic Cyclone DX SBOM is the kind of that's already the background we build on. The vulnerabilities reference, it comes from this continuous security analysis that I mentioned happens after. And you'll see that they extend out to a separate block on the right. It's because the TBOM points to these documents such as the SSCG, DSCG as external resources. And why we do that is it allows a parallel generation where you're not necessarily waiting on each piece to be generated. Things could be generated, for example, in parallel, and also it enables more testing to be done later. You could attach a new SSCG or DSCG to the TBOM. Trust assurance, testing proofs, etc. They're kind of a repurposing of existing elements of the Cyclone DX specification, and the trust assurance is fairly generic stuff. As I mentioned, it's the kind of hardware fingerprinting. It would be use of hashing signatures. The testing proof is a bit more interesting because we want to ideally prove that the computations occurred in the testing. So we want to prove the SSCG, the static testing, for example, was executed and exactly what they did as well. We'd like to prove that. So this is, I'll be honest, is one of the more challenging aspects of the project, to prove the computation or maybe associate a trust score with how well the computations could be proved. So RESCALE was built with, as I mentioned, the secure supply chains in mind, secure by design supply chains, and the tools really, they naturally align nicely with the vision of the CRA in many cases, especially in contexts like IoT. So we're very excited to contribute to a more resilient digital ecosystem here. And indeed, we do have one of our use cases. They produce IoT devices, kind of ticketing systems, this kind of thing. And that's it. Thanks very much, everybody, for listening. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I could go back to one of the previous diagrams if we have any questions specifically.
Okay, many thanks, Alan, for this interesting presentation and the first insight into the RESCALE project. I think there are some very interesting concepts. And we will get into further or deeper discussions after all presentations have been held, and in the panel discussion later on. And we are thankful for that you will join later on for that. So I think I forgot to introduce myself. So just to know that you know who I am. So my name is Martin Schneider from Fraunhofer Focus, and our institute is participating in the DOS project, who's organizing this event here. Okay, so we have now the second presentation from out of the 7. So that is about the Emerald project. That is about advancing certification as a service. I think also with respect to all the certification efforts from all parties, not only the manufacturers, but also testing labs and authorities, a very interesting concept. So the presentation will be held by Björn Fanter. So he's the head of the research of Fabersoft, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope it's possible to hear me already. And I will try to share my screen fluently and share my slides there. Screen should be there. Slides will be in a second. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about is evidence management for continuous certification as a service in the cloud. This, of course, originates from activities with the CSA, not the CRA directly, but all the things that we do here for cloud service provider compliance and security is directly connected to the CRA by the part that if you use cloud services, they have to adhere to the highest compliance standards and make sure that for different parts, continuous audit is possible and not only a buzzword. So,
excuse me, Björn,
yeah?
we cannot see your slides yet. Maybe you need to confirm.
Can't see them. Okay,
no,
thanks for the info. Then I'm having a problem with the screen. Do you see the screen by itself?
No, I think you need to confirm that you want to share anything in the second step.
Huh.
Now it starts.
Okay, sorry for that. Which screen do you see?
The empty screen with the desktop wallpaper.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, sorry for that. I'm new to Zoom. I have to say this is a tool that I use very seldomly. Let's see. Now again. Now you see the slides.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and now I have to make up for the time. Let's see if that is possible. So very quick about me. Already said, Björn Fanter. We just started to set up the Fabersoft Research as an own company now in April. Very exciting times. Let's see how that works out. Emerald. Emerald is an innovation action in the Horizon Europe program. As you can see here, we have a good number of very renowned partners, industry, research companies, and an auditor, Nixu, who is helping us in this project with the auditor role. What Emerald is trying to achieve is compliance or certification as a service. I'm saying trying to achieve because, as you might be aware, it is mostly straightforward when you look at technical requirements in certification schemes. Checking for geolocation, TLS, or other encryption-based things. This is feasible from a technical point of view. You can set up metrics, you can check this, but it becomes kind of fuzzy and problematic when you look at organizational requirements, working contracts, offboarding processes, policy documents, all of these things. So what we are already achieving and what we are aiming for is to decrease the time needed to certify, to set up an audit, and to recertify, select, and evaluate cloud-based services. And this is our connection to the CRA and to the IoT Edge Cloud Continuum-based universe. And now it's done with the buzzwords, because in Emerald, we started off with different building blocks that originated from a project called Medina that some of these partners started some years ago, and where we already showed that the continuous audit process is feasible and possible. We picked up parts from Medina and created different evidence management, compliance, and standards and data parts of it to see how it is possible to deal with generalized requirements, controls, and metrics. And this is a big part of the project and something that we are currently working very heavily on, a graphical user interface to make this framework as an digital assistance tool for the audit process. This is something where we learned that we are really able to speed up and streamline the process. Target users for this project or for this certification as a service idea, like or how Emerald understands it, are, of course, cloud service providers like Fabersoft. We have a very high incentive to use a framework like that to be, for instance, compliant for a possible EUCS level high in the future. The EUCS is the European Cybersecurity Standardization Scheme, a harmonized standard, which I hope most in the audience knows. If not, we can talk a little bit about this later. But also cloud customers. They are the ones why we want or have to be compliant to different schemes, but also auditors, experts to work with this environment and to look into cybersecurity certification from a continuous point of view and automated point of view, but also agencies, so scheme owners, so someone like the BSI in Germany, for instance, or ENISA for the European EUCF, as if it is really happening. On this slide, and I was a little bit quick on this slide, we just see how we are trying to address these target users and what we aim for to provide to them. I would say that here the core idea really is, as we see it for the auditors in the middle, the audit assistance framework. So it's not only about automatically monitor and check and collect and assess evidences and forward them and have a trustworthy component to make this happen and to assist the technical parts of the audit, but also to pick up users, people, experts who are involved in all the different audit steps and processes. The reason why I'm stressing this so much is partly on this slide, but also on the next. What we've done in the first year so far is that in the first step, we onboarded the pilot partners with the Medina ideas of how this framework could work, what this means. And we came to a big amount of questions. Okay, how can this be used as a cloud service provider? How does it bring transparency to cloud customers? And how is it bringing complexity reduction to an auditor? And we saw that this is possible by providing guidance throughout the audit process, because it is possible to pick up the different approaches that you take towards a cybersecurity audit and guide it through user journeys in a software environment that also, and I have to go back a little bit, make use of different, of different IT tools that collect and assess evidences and manage these in a trustworthy way and forward these to systems that also here work with blockchain to make this data transparent and trustworthy. But for the next few minutes in this presentation, I really want to focus not on these blockchain and trustworthiness mechanisms. I want to focus on the Emerald UI UX, the user experience for complexity reduction, because this is something that I currently think is what Emerald can bring into the whole discussion. And I think this is something that should not be overlooked, because when you look at user-centered requirements, and we conducted several of them in Emerald, you can see how compliance managers, control implementers, technical experts, but also business experts work with these kind of information, with these schemes, with certification schemes, with regulations, with policies, and all of these things. And you can develop different workflows, processes, and user stories. So what we did is we created different roles who are involved in all this kind of work, and we connected them to personas. This is nothing new in software development or in marketing, for instance. You usually do that. But in a research project like Emerald, it is kind of new, and it is not so straightforward, because we have a lot of discussion with our technical partners and technical experts in the project, because the different components already do what they are supposed to do for the compliance monitoring of technical controls. Yeah, but they are not very interconnected as of now, and we are heavily working on that when it comes to make this transparent and explainable. Let a user be in control of what is going on, because at the end of the day, in a cloud service company, you want to be in charge of what is going on. You want to know what is going on. And as an auditor, you want to understand what is going on, even though a system then should continuously over time monitor these parts. On these slides, I can save time again, because we have very detailed workflows of how this happens. We condensed them to different steps, and we came then down to a very short overview, very reduced of what this is. So if you break all the detailed processes in an assisted audit down, you come up to, it's about set up and manage these schemes, set up and manage targets of evaluation and your audit scope, and then be ready for audit. This is a very easy and very short picture for Emerald is on the way to reduce complexity for different stakeholders in the cloud service sector or cloud computing sector. And we achieve this really through a certification as a service approach. I don't say that we invent this, and I'm almost finished, but by introducing this user-centric guided workflow process, and I know that I did not talk about all the technical details, we are able to pick up all the different tools and make them transparently to a user and transparently to the user, make them explain to the user what is going on so that the audit process can be trusted. And now, with a little bit of too much time, I'm finished, and I'm happy for discussions or to participate in discussions later. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Björn, for the interesting presentation. I think also a different view on these topics. So we will just discuss about that later. It's about the DOS project and particularly about how certification and CRI compliance could be supported through the DOS device security passport. The presentation will be held by Sarah Matteo, assistant professor at the University of Mosir. And now I would like to give the floor to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Martin. Let me share. Okay. So the idea of this talk is to present the Device Security Passport, or DSP, which is a concept that has been developed within the DOS project. So DOS is based on two premises. The first one is that providing more visibility about the supply chain generates relevant security information. And the second one is that placing specific control points in key stages of the supply chain reduce the attack surface and also the risk. So by combining these two premises, one of the DOS objectives is the definition of this machine readable document, the Device Security Passport, which is the focus of this talk, to contain all the information generated and consumed by the different stakeholders of the supply chain. And the second objective of the DOS project is to create an architecture that tests, models, and validates the security of the components, ensuring that all the documentation is complete, that they don't have vulnerabilities, and that they are well configured. So with this concept, DOS aligns with key European regulations, in this case, for example, the NIS2 directive for sharing information, or with the Cyber Security and Cyber Resilience Act to establish a trusted and resilient supply chain. So in particular, the DOS DSP was designed to provide a solution for the information exchange between the different supply chain actors, containing and centralizing in some sense all the relevant security information. So for example, the manufacturer can generate, when it's his designing or imagine a product, can generate a list of components, in this case the SBOM, also provide expected behavior, security recommendations. The certification authority can also generate a certificate, a security assessment, more recommendations. And later, the integrator and the operator can include information about new vulnerabilities. These alerts should go to the manufacturer. The manufacturer can provide mitigations or new updates or patches. So all this information is continuously being updated, generated, and also consumed by all the stakeholders. So the DSP is in the center of all this information exchange, providing a common meta model to describe everything and make it available for all the stakeholders. The DSP was also designed to support the CRA requirements during the whole life cycle. So, for example, the DSP is capable to document the components that are contained in the product using the NIST SBOM, which provides also transparency and facilitates the analysis of cascade effects. The DSP is also capable to document vulnerabilities using BEX or BDR formats. And we also leverage on RESCALE models from the NIST. I will talk about this later, to describe information about previous security assessments, evidences, controls that are fulfilled by the product. So it can be used later to support the composition of the certificates and to agile the certification process. For the security by default configuration, which is indeed mandated by the CRA, the DSP includes a reference to the MUD file from the IETF, a standard that is used to describe security policies recommended by the manufacturer. And the idea is to take these policies to be enforced during the bootstrapping, providing this secure by default configuration. Is it also possible to express indeed a different configuration for different contexts, dealing also with the problem of the security level depending on the context? And later, during the operational phase, the DSP also supports the remediation and the disclosure of vulnerabilities using the threat MUD file from the NIST that is capable to describe mitigation in terms of security policies. The DSP combines this threat MUD file with previous formats like BEX or BDR, so it can be used to alert the manufacturer or the certification authority about a possible security change, and the manufacturer can release a mitigation in terms of a thread mode file before a patch is released, providing also a faster provisional fix before the final update or patch. So for defining the DSP, we leverage on OSCAL models to define the meta model of the DSP. OSCAL was defined by the NIST and are a set of very complex models indeed, capable of describing how controls are fulfilled inside a system, to describe components, assessment plan, results. So it's quite complete. In those, what we have done is to adapt this model to reduce their complexity and to include external information from other descriptors. So, for example, the H-bond, the S-bond, thread mode file, the XBDR. So indeed, having this external information as links and not embedded directly inside the DSP ensure that all the information keeps updated. For managing the DSP, the DOS architecture defines a specific component, which is the DSP platform, that manages the access to the DSP information and that also collects all the requests from the different stakeholders, the integrator, the operator, but also from the different components of the architecture that are indeed places on these key stages of the supply chain to ensure the product security. So components for testing, for validating the architecture, and for providing this secure deployment. Also, we envision two different levels of DSP. We have a generic DSP, which is generated by the manufacturer, associated with a model in general, and contains generic information such as the S-bond, the H-bond, the S-bond, the mood, the thread mood. So once the product is sold to an integrator, the manufacturer can create a DSP instance that is linked to a specific product that is sold, including also unique IDs or information about the keys and a link to this generic DSP. Then when the product is sold, this DSP instance is transferred to the integrator and the operator that can manage the DSP instance, including and refining the information, include more specific information regarding the context in which the product is operating. So the key point here is that if they detect, the integrator or the operator detect a possible vulnerability, the manufacturer can be alerted and release a remediation. And although this remediation will be published on the generic DSP, the integrator and the operator will also receive the mitigation because there is this link between the generic DSP and the instance one. So as a recap to finish, in those projects, we try to generate this meta schema to represent and collect all the security information produced and consumed by all the different stakeholders of the supply chain. And we have also aligned it with the Cyber Resilient Act. So the DSP is capable of describing also metadata, for example, the contact information for the manufacturer or for vulnerability disclosure, the unique identification of the device, the EU declaration of conformity, and also links to this external descriptor that can facilitate the security lifecycle management. For example, the S-bond, the mood, the XBDR, or the thread mode. So thank you so much. And if you have a question, maybe at the end.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sarah, for this module for CRA compliance and communicating between the stakeholders, this device security passport. I think we will have some questions also later in the panel discussion about that. And I'm now happy to announce our fifth project. That is a project called CERTIFY, that is being presented by Stefano Sebastio and Matteo Mola. So the project is about how a framework and methodology adherent to the EU Cyber Resilience Act, and it will report some observations from the CERTIFY project. So I'm not sure who will present. Will it be you, Stefano, or Matteo?
I will start.
Okay, but Matteo, let me just first introduce you. I'm sorry. So Matteo Sebastio is senior manager at Collins Aerospace, and Matteo is sorry, Matteo Mole, you are the manager for cybersecurity technologies and innovation at EXO, and Stefano is senior manager at Collins Aerospace. The stage is yours, Matteo.
Thank you. I'm gonna rapidly share the screen. I hope you can see my screen.
No, not yet.
One sec.
Now it seems to start. Yeah, now we can see your screen.
And I assume you see, okay, fine. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. And indeed, I need my companion Stefano to support me because I don't go anywhere without him. Anyway, my name is Matteo. I'm manager for cybersecurity technologies at EXO, the European Cybersecurity Organization. And today I'm here to talk to you about CERTIFY. Very briefly, we're going to give you a very rapid high-level introduction of CERTIFY. We're going to show you a visual of how the framework works. And then we're going to deep dive a bit more in the Cyber Resilience Act. Well, because you're here, you might have heard of it, but well, you can hear from someone who's hearing about it every day and probably could write a song about it. And then we will just show you what we're discussing within the consortium, where we're trying to assess the feasibility of a pilot using CERTIFY in the framework of the CRA. Now, as I said, CERTIFY is a consortium made of 13 partners from 8 different countries. It proposes an approach and a framework to manage cybersecurity of connected devices through their life cycle. So basically, what we try to achieve here is the idea that you don't ship and forget a device into your network, but there's continuous monitoring and assessment. And if we go a bit beyond, let's say, the buzzwords, CERTIFY is essentially a proposal for a security framework that is set to achieve the following. Ultimately, securing the lifecycle management of IoT devices via a set of combination of tools and methodologies. In particular, we start from the manufacturer, and also to keep the nomenclature of the Cyber Resilience Act, based on the manufacturer choice of configuration. CERTIFY help you evaluating and taking a picture of such security status, and subsequently pushing such configuration and instruction in an automated way into your devices. It does so via secure enrollment and provisioning, and this can be repeated, obviously, when there's a change in the circumstances. It can enhance open hardware security by exploiting a combination of known security principles, such as key provisioning, secure storage, secure boot, and encryption. And also, staying in the buzzword a little bit, but continuous monitoring and analysis is done via definition of behavioral profiles. And CERTIFY allow the performance of boot and runtime security assessment and performing monitoring, detection, and reaction. The nice thing of all this is that all these phases, all these tools that we put together in this framework are wrapped up in the possibility of a secure and trusted information sharing system that is information that are shared among the stakeholders involved in the framework. You will see that this is quite relevant when it comes to the Cyber Resilience Act. For those of you who have started looking at it, probably you will see the amount of notification and information you're supposed to share and to keep at hand. So moving forward, we just have a high-level abstraction of the CERTIFY framework. Just for your information, we investigated 3 use cases, and we're going to look at one in a minute. But just to give a general idea, as we said, first of all, there's an input of the manufacturer, like in the Cyber Resilience Act, as an active role to play. They need to define security requirement. And for those of you who have been speaking to the European Commission, you know how often manufacturer has to do with risk assessment. Out of this initial definition from the manufacturer, then we issue a certification that is used to support the secure bootstrapping of the device into your network. And then it comes the operation phase, where through this framework, we capture changes and continuous exchange of threat and vulnerabilities and this information via the tools that we mentioned here, such as IDS, CM, and SOAR. But obviously, this is all a dynamic environment, like the environment where IoT devices are placed. And therefore, given the evolution of the threat landscape, the framework helps you update, upgrade, or reconfigure the devices by basically recertifying it. So we're taking another picture of the secure state and use it. And doing so by the standard that we choose to use, which is the extended thread mood file. So this is in a nutshell what CERTIFY is about, why it's relevant for us, and why Stefano asked me to talk today. It's not him talking, is because, you know, Cyber Resilience Act is coming, and it's coming fast. So you already remember the previous presentation reminded already what the Cyber Resilience Act is. Let me take a slightly different perspective then. I would like to remind the Cyber Resilience Act is a regulation. It's not a directive, it's not another type of act of the European Union, it's a regulation. So it means that it is as if the parliament in your country has passed a law. It has entered into force. It is a law. This happened last December, and the application is going to take time, right? But it's coming, and it's coming fast. And this is obviously very relevant for the IoT products, because I'm not going to recall the details of the Cyber Resilience Act, but it obviously has a huge scope for product with digital elements. In CERTIFY, what we realize, but not only in CERTIFY probably, is that Cyber Resilience Act imposes some requirements and then asks the manufacturer to show conformance to such requirements. This might seem very similar thing, but they're actually quite different. With CERTIFY framework, the ambition is indeed to help you get your posture right to satisfy the central requirement of Cyber Resilience Act, at least part of them, not all of them, and be in a good posture to show and provide evidence of such respect of the essential requirements. And indeed, in this case, the extended mood file is what really comes at end. Obviously, if you want to talk more about Cyber Resilience Act, horizontal standards, and all the thing, happy to discuss. But let me just now show you what the reasoning we're having at CERTIFY vis-a-vis the Cyber Resilience Act. So we picked one of the use cases, the connected cabin system use cases. We have, as I said, we have 3 use cases, but this one is the one we chose to start to brainstorm how this could fit within the Cyber Resilience Act. Now, we applied the CERTIFY framework in an ecosystem, obviously involving an airplane network with its obviously its perimeter, its gateway, and the number of stakeholders that are involving, for instance, maintainer, owner, operation centers, but also the airport infrastructure that is communicating with the airplane network. This is something that speaks quite evidently to people, because obviously we take airplane, we know how much IoT devices are nowadays used within airplanes. And in a more granular way, within this use case, we identified 3 scenarios. One is the installation of a new component. The second is the monitoring basically of ongoing operation, and then the replacing and repurposing of an existing device within the network of the airplane. This helped us try to brainstorm and apply these scenarios to the Cyber Resilience Act. What would mean in the case of an application of such framework to be compliant to the Cyber Resilience Act? Well, to sum up, we came up with this reasoning, and in all fairness, probably this slide is getting outdated as we speak, because for those of you who are involved in the discussion around the Cyber Resilience Act, there's a lot of details that are being discussed when it comes to implementing Act, for instance. But just to give you an idea so this is a living file, living discussion that we're having, and we're probably finalizing it in the next few months. But to give you an idea, we have 3 columns. So the first one are the scenarios of the use case that I described. The second one are some of the Cyber Resilience Act aspect that we wanted to pay attention to. And the third one is how CERTIFY, basically some feature that CERTIFY some solution CERTIFY can propose. If like you see in this slide, many things overlap with each other. But in essence, everything is sort of wrapped up by the existence of an extended mood file. I would also maybe like to give some specification because, vulnerability management are part of essential requirements. But these are the way we try to identify some of the topics we could assess with CERTIFY. And for instance, when we install a new component, whatever that is, into an airplane network, we found a linkage with the essential requirements when it comes to having this approach of security by design, where you need to place your product, well, in the case of CRA, into the market, but in this case, into a network without known vulnerability. And with CERTIFY, you can provide a certificate of such secure state. But also, whenever you monitoring and the operation that involve the device in such network in this use case, vulnerability management is something that obviously is part of the essential requirement. It's part of the tools that we put together within CERTIFY help you and facilitate. Not only that, as I was saying, with this extended MUD file, you basically collect a number of evidence, a number of information that are going to be used and can be useful, could be a starting point for your notification due diligence toward the authorities or the other stakeholders involved, not only in the network you're working with, but also with the authorities. Just as a reminder, the Cyber Resilience Act introduced, for instance, it's not there yet, but they're working on it, single reporting platform. It asks manufacturer to have a single point of contact. So it would be at hand with such a framework to have already some material you can share in the communication with the authorities when obviously is needed. And then another thing we were brainstorming together and it's linked to the scenario of replaceable unit. The Cyber Resilience Act asks you basically in a way to brainstorm yourself and understand what could be the use, the intended foreseeable use of your product with digital elements. What is clear is that you cannot foresee all the usage, right? We can always have a malicious actor that take whatever IoT device you put on a plane and try to do some harm. The idea of having such a framework is that you can maybe not foresee all the usage, but you can, based on the new usage that emerge, you can repurpose the tool. As we said, you can create a new certificate of this new security state and basically repurpose a tool that was initially purposed for something else. So these, in a nutshell, are the discussion we identified within CERTIFY. As we started to discuss, we went even more in depth. So we are now in the phase of wrapping these up so that we can have some more final conclusion. And for the conclusion to my presentation, let me just state a few of the points that I just discussed. So certifying is first and foremost a methodology and a framework to manage IoT devices and their security life cycle. It's linked to the Cyber Resilience Act because the Cyber Resilience Act mandate monitoring the security of your product with digital element all along the life cycle. And this is a bit revolutionary, and it's revolutionary also the scope that the Cyber Resilience Act is asking you to work on. Obviously, as I said, we use MUD extended file to increase the potential and to make the link with all the part of this complex framework. And we're very, let's say, excited about keep proceeding and concluding this exercise of proceeding toward a pilot for the EU Cyber Resilience Act. And I think piloting is what probably is really needed nowadays because we've been talking a lot about the legal text, but we need to see how all these work in practice. I hope I stayed in the time, and with that, I conclude my presentation. I'll be happy to discuss further.
Thanks a lot, Matteo. I think you're well on the time, so we can easily continue. And thanks for joining also the discussion later on. Okay, that was about the CERTIFY project. So we have now 2 presentations left. In between, please be reminded if you have any questions, there is this Q&A tool provided by the Zoom tool. So if you have any questions that you would like to have answered, either for a specific project or maybe to the project in general, and to the views of the different participants, then please put it into the Q&A tool, and we will wait it into during the panel discussion. So the next presentation is about the TARDIS project. That's about creating trustworthy and resilient decentralized intelligence for edge systems. The presentation will be held by Professor Carla Ferreira, I hope I pronounced it correctly. She's professor at the Nova University in Lisbon. And Paula, the stage is yours.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So thanks for the presentation and good afternoon to everybody. So I'm going to talk about Project TARDIS. This is a project that is focused on the development of trustworthy and resilient decentralized intelligence for edge systems. And this project is not focused as the previous one on cybersecurity, but we have components that are crucial to cybersecurity also. So this is a swarm project, and what are swarms? So swarms are systems that integrate a large number of different devices. So a high scale of devices that are heterogeneous and they are dynamic. So you have devices entering and exiting the system. They are decentralized and they also have intelligence. A particular aspect that these systems, these devices need to cooperate towards a shared goal, and they need to evolve and adapt autonomously. And that's why they need the intelligence component. So I set up what are these swarm systems and what are the challenges here. So first of all, to develop this kind of applications, you need developers that have a high level of expertise across multiple domains. And this is not easily available for SMEs, for instance. So we need to bring down this expertise level for developing these applications. And the main challenges here are the tooling gaps. So there are no automated verification tools for this kind of systems. And this may raise issues with security. Another issue is that there are non-interoperable software stacks. So there's a huge effort that developers, a steep learning curve to learn these software stacks, and then developers are kind of in a bind with that stack because learning another one would be very difficult. Moreover, these are non-proprietary, non-EU proprietary tools, so this is also an issue. And as we've seen recently, Europe must depend on itself. Moreover, when the project started, there was a lack of mechanisms for decentralized intelligence, which again, you want to keep data closer to in the devices of the user. You don't want to share data and put data in the cloud. What is the TARDIS approach? So in practice, we are proposing a toolbox that has an integrated IDE, and we have a distributed runtime dealing with these heterogeneous devices and different operational conditions. At the core of you can see my pointer, I hope. At the core, we have a programming model, and we have APIs that provide to the developers already mechanisms for distribution, for data management, and for algorithms for learning and inference. So the developers don't have to develop this from their own. This is already provided by our integrated development environment. A very crucial aspect in this IDE is the verification framework that allows us to reason about these applications. And again, increasing the correctness of these applications has a direct impact on the security. So the development is not enough. So we then need to run these systems, and so we also have a runtime that is able to work in these different operational conditions. And we are not building everything from scratch. So we are also interacting or have compatibility with already existing frameworks. In practice, we want to make the development of these applications easier. We have some technical achievements, which I won't focus on. I'll just use them to show you a use case, but maybe I just mentioned two. So federated learning is crucial for data privacy, and also the formal verification techniques that I mentioned earlier are being used in TARDIS to provide a correct by construction development environment. And when I mean, let's not be too ambitious, when I mean correct by construction, is for certain properties. We are not certifying software. So one of the use cases that I can illustrate the technical developments that we've done is energy communities. So one of the issues nowadays with electric cars, it's that the grid is not prepared for the high increase of electric cars that we have nowadays. And so the idea is to create these energy communities where users can produce energy and sell and buy energy from their neighbors. So in practice, they create microgrids within a community. And this is a good approach, because then the energy is cheaper because it's coming from your neighbors, it's carbon neutral. And if you don't have a neighbor to buy your energy, you can still use the main grid as a backup. And what TARDIS is giving here, the solutions is providing, is making easy to develop these kind of applications, because you have here a series of a set of heterogeneous devices communicating. What is the approach that TARDIS followed here? So for the forecast of energy consumption and production, we are using decentralized federated learning. And here the goal is to ensure data privacy. So we are not sharing the data. We are just sharing summaries of that data. Moreover, we have also distributed communication framework that provides reliable communication support for these kind of applications. Moreover, we also have information flow analysis, automatic information analysis techniques that can ensure the privacy compliance of data. So when you have access control, you check who is accessing your data, but information flow, it's also checks that the data, as after being accessed, is not placed in a public or non-private domain. Moreover, we have a simplified programming environment. So the idea is that you don't need these expert developers to build these applications that can help building these communities fast and with correctness guarantees. And what are the conclusions here? So we are providing a correct by design methodology. Although obviously when the project started, the Cyber Resilience Act wasn't yet in force, but we have obviously already concerns about security, and we are addressing them in the project. The project also targets reducing the reliance on non-EU proprietary technologies, and also enhance resilience and interoperability for these applications. So thank you for your time. I think I was very fast, and we have here the consortium.
Thanks a lot, Carla, for the insights into the TARDIS project. I think it's also a bit different than what the others
Yes,
do.
quite
So
different.
that makes also it more interesting maybe and raises different questions. So if you have any of these questions, please use the Q&A tool and put it there. You can do it right now or later on during the panel discussion. We try to answer all of these questions, but don't hesitate to type them here into the Q&A tool. Okay, thanks, Carla. We are now coming to our last presentation. That is the presentation about the FLUIDOS project. It's about the fluidification of computing resources to securing supply chains. So a very different concept, as it seems to me at least. And I'm happy to hear Albert Säubers speaking about the project. So he's director of Martell Innovate in the Netherlands. And I would like to give the stage to Albert.
Vielen Dank, Martin. Thank you for the introduction. I'll share my screen. So yeah, indeed, as you said, Martin, we take it from a bit different approach. If you are using, so FLUIDOS is all about flexible and scalable, secure and decentralized operating system. So it's a made operating system project. But in the supply chain of computing, the availability is a very important. Security, there's several presentations on the security level, cost effectiveness, because a lot of resources additionally are needed today that are not in the, I would say, established and available silos, as we call them, because they are either strictly bound. And there's need for resources that are available, but you will not afford or you cannot afford yet. But if you access to resources outside your own domain, you want to make sure that these are secured and user secured, where you can trust the provider. But it's also enhancing collaboration between partners in the supply chain. And this is just a small graph. If you look at IoT edge to cloud, there's a many different partners and many different combinations made, and all of them are totally fixed, more or less, meaning that you trust on what you've built. But if you are making this more flexible and you're scaling out of your own domain into shared domains, that trust should be also involved and created. And this is where FLUIDOS is, I would say, building on top of the security technologies that are presented in the other projects. Because FLUIDOS is, as I said, it's aiming at fluidification of your computing environment. So deployment transparency. You have your own domain, and you are needing resources either or at a lower level or at a higher level. It's an IoT data service, or it's an edge service for computing. And you need to scale out to the cloud, or you need to step sidewards into another edge availability that's closer to you. But you do this based on a certain criteria. And I'll come to that in the following set. But it's also communication strategy. You need to make sure that we can have a microservice related into a cluster inside your own domain, but also outside the domains that you're managing, as long as you can trust them. And that brings you into resource transparency. So no need to acquire all GPUs for deploying AI, but using GPUs as made available in the cloud or in edge services is something you have to look into. But you need, as I said, build on the trust that you do. So what FLUIDOS did so far, the main innovations that we created is a REA protocol, which is a handling protocol, request and publish from computer resources that you need or you can share with a certain security level. So if you're accessing external resources, you would like to make sure that these have a certain security level, either or. It's something that's telemetry or Emerald is presenting with the certification as a service, but it needs to be instant because you need it now. So you want to make sure that there is a certificate on a certain security level that you demand. It has to be available, or at least there's a timeliness parameter in there when you need it. And we focus very much on energy efficient, because you can get everything from the cloud, but maybe from an as a reporting point, you want to make sure that you don't need it now, but you want it as the lowest carbon impact possible, and reach out to data centers maybe in Tenerife or in the sunny areas of the world when possible. The second innovation is this orchestration, because you have an intent, you have defined what you need, when you need it, and for how long you need it. Then there's this match and request, and that comes with the security level. So there's option to do this security check, because you want to rely and trust the provider, but also the other way around. The provider of services wants to trust you, not abusing the compute power that is provided or shared at the moment. And the orchestration ends with a contract using a distributed ledger, and that is closed as soon as I would say the data processing or the compute use is over, and then the used space is made available for other users. A specific orchestration is now developed for the carbon efficiency. That's based on energy data. The University of Berlin is very strongly focused on carbon efficiency, and there's a dedicated orchestration model for carbon efficiency in this. So what we do is, from the silo-based computing that each has its own defined silo with a contract with Amazon or a contract with Azure, into the edge, you will more or less be current when you can fly from your own into the telco edge or into another cloud, not within predefined contracts. And in the ideal, it would mean that you can scale out from your own domain to any other domain based on the criteria set for your search in the REA protocol and the orchestration level that you can define. This is helping to secure availability and security as you need. This is an overview of FLUIDOS. I will not go into detail here, but you see it's at the moment it's based on Kubernetes, different versions of Kubernetes. It's the liquid Fluid Foundation, and on top we see that FLUIDOS is bringing all these elements together from the device up to the shared use in the stack. So secured a supply chain computing, it's now IoT to edge to cloud scalability without silos, but still secured. Sharing scarce resources among partners in the supply chain is where we bring collaboration and trust in the partnerships, because we can base this on the security levels that are shared. We avoid vendor lock-in because you're flexible to go and move from one service provider to another. It's cost effective because the compute resource, the scarce compute resources are effectively shared and used. That means if you make an investment in hardware, you can put it up for shared use, linking it to the REA protocol. And that means you trust the accessed resources, but users accessing your resources can be shared. You can trust them to use them in a correct way. And in light of the European conditions and need for expanding edge capabilities, this is how we support maximizing use and secured use of that function. I will skip this. If there is interest for more information on FLUIDOS, please visit our website. There's a lot of details. There's a lot of interviews. There's presentation from the open calls that have been already implementing FLUIDOS as a concept, and our use cases in drone surveillance, in robotics, but also in energy grid management and energy grid security. I think they speak for themselves. I tried to speed up a bit, Martin, to make sure there's room enough for discussion.
Thanks a lot, Albert, for the insights into the FLUIDOS project. And so interesting concept, and also I think addresses an important need. So I hope we can also discuss during the panel discussion. So thanks to all the speakers here for their presentations. I think also you made a perfect timing. So we are actually in time and can now start the panel discussion. Thanks a lot for all these interesting discussions and presentations. I think the discussions will start now. But first, we had a poll at the beginning of the webinar where we asked the participants and also the speakers about their opinion on what is the biggest impact on the IoT supply chain security from the CRA, and I think we have a clear answer. So we have 7 possible answers, but I think most of the people who are in favor of the CRA to provide a stronger enforcement of security by design and the security by default principles. I think that's also a positive view on the impact of the Cyber Resilience Act, because it does not it implies best practices are enforced and not negative impact. So that's great. Maybe we can also ask the panelists about their opinion. So the speakers here. Maybe Albert, you can share your opinion on that.
Yes, well, I was one of the 48% answering this question. Because if we do this in the correct way, and in light of what I said on FLUIDOS, if you want to share resources, you must make sure that you can trust this. And so designing this in a structured way that we all agree on, and it helps you to build trust more easily, and you can start sharing your resources.
Okay, thanks. Matteo, so I see you just here, so maybe you can also share your view on that.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused about what question are we tackling now?
We had in the beginning of the webinar a poll about what is the biggest impact of the CRA on IoT supply chain security. I hope you can see it on the screen again.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And I just wanted to hear what you think. I think you can also give another answer than those that were proposed here.
I mean, to me, this is where to start. It's I would say probably I would be also leaning toward I think I replied on the strong enforcement of security by design, but I think the Cyber Resilience Act is really a big net, right? The scope is huge, it's really great, and the consequences, say, we're still projecting of what's going to happen, how we're going to apply. For sure, I think one of the good consequences that are going to happen here is that hopefully there's going to be a trickling effect back to your supply chain, meaning that all manufacturers want to affix a C mark, right? Keep selling the product in the EU market. So it makes due diligence and make sure that their vendors are also compliant to the CRA. And this, I mean, in theory, should make it so that we go up to the supply chain and make sure that everyone is on the right side. So it's, to me, there's a security by design approach in the sense that with some years, with some cycles, all the products that are placed on the EU market are secure, I mean, not without known vulnerabilities. In practice, this to me is one of the hot topics, the key problem also to solve and to specify when it comes to conformity. But I would say CRA is raising the overall security level of the market of IoT devices. So it depends if the appliance will be as successful as we hope, then this increase will be quite higher. Otherwise, we hope there won't be too many actors that will slip through the net. I hope my question was not too long, but it's just I've been thinking about this stuff for all the last year and a half.
Yeah, I think it was actually perfect for to think about that loudly, so that's fine. Thank you. Björn, what do you think about the impact of the Cyber Resilience Act on IoT supply chain security?
Well, I actually clicked, now it's closed again, the window, right? I think I clicked one of the most given answers. I'm within these 48% there. Because I work in a company where the security design really is a core principle. Of course, we have always the user sentiment and simplicity of our software as a service solution in the focus, but security by design is really something that makes our business possible when we think on all the e-government solutions and things like that. So for me, as for the Cyber Resiliency Act and the Cybersecurity Act, I really hope and I strongly believe that it helps to enforce the security by design, not as, well, now we have to do it and let's see what's the minimal effort that we can do. But I hope and I believe that it also fosters okay, this works. There are tools, there are techniques, there are ways to do that, and there is a reason for that. So I think that it will shift this directly into the focus of also managing boards and how to say that in English, the decision makers on the top levels of a company to put this more into the foreground. And this is something that that I'm happy to see. In German, it would be a little bit easier for me to put this in words, but I think I transported the idea.
Yeah, great. I think it was clear.
Okay.
At least for me as a German.
Okay.
Okay. Carla, what do you think about the impact on IoT supply chain security with respect to the Cyber Resilience Act, but also maybe also with respect to the AI Act, because I think your project also explicitly included AI technology.
I'm going to start with the previous question.
Yeah,
So,
fine.
I think it's really important to have this enforced security is enforced. I remember talking with a company, this was years ago, and I was told I wanted to have a project with them with security. Security is not seen.
Yeah.
So clients don't pay for it. I think things now changed a lot with all these problems that have been happening. But it's good that we have a legislation forcing companies to face the importance of security.
Mm-hmm.
I think in AI now is more, it's obvious that you need the data, the user data, and protecting user data is quite crucial.
Yeah.
Although I'm not, I should say, an expert on security.
Yeah. So do you see that the Cyber Resilience Act and the AI Act are tightly intercoupled, or do they play together, or do they address completely different topics? So I think this would be also interesting to see whether the regulation overlaps or not.
I believe that tying together. I'm not sure if companies are ready for this in practice. Are they? I don't know. More experts than me, expertise higher than me, but I have doubts on that
Yeah.
because well, at least from the companies I know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see. I think, it's always a question whether companies are ready for the regulation or from the European Union, but I think that's a completely different topic that we don't want to touch now. Yeah. So maybe we can continue with Lara. So not only about this question, but also what do you think about questions we have heard now at many different approaches, and also I would say modules that would help in addressing and implementing the Cyber Resilience Act and its requirements. But I think another question might be, since we have heard so many solutions to all the requirements from the Cyber Resilience Act, how can we integrate them? So what about interoperability of the different solutions, not only with respect to the different approaches and modules, but also with respect to the different stakeholders, including the authorities?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big problem because I mean, by law, we are obliged to share this information, to collaborate also with the NIS directive and so on. But yes, the problem is that we have this high amount of information and how we can share, how we can coordinate this. This is one of the points that TARDIS is trying to solve with this DSP, but I mean, it's an initial idea. Of course, this is something that should be, agreed between the different stakeholders to agree on a common format, because if not, it would be quite difficult to share all this information and to be machine readable and to process and I mean, to share information that is really useful. Because if we can't reuse this information, I mean, it's nothing to do about this.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Also with respect to the topic of the T-bomb and the DSP, it seems that are quite similar concepts. So how do you think how they interrelate?
It
So
is for me.
Yeah. For you and for
Yeah.
you.
For me, I think that the T-bone is also an alternative. So I mean, we part from OSCAL and we extend or we reduce to and we adapt to the different information to be included as external links. And I think the T-bomb is more focused on extending the Cyclone DX format to embed the information directly inside. So I mean, I think they are different approaches, but I think the objective is more or less the same. In our case, we prefer to delegate on the external information of the different stakeholders. So, for example, the SBOM will be stored in the in the server of the manufacturer. Sorry, I think that in this case, the SBOM will be embedded in this T-bomb and the information about vulnerabilities and so on. In my opinion, I think it's better to decouple the information. For example, information about vulnerabilities is more dynamic than an SBOM. And probably you will need to regenerate the T-bone completely if there is any particular change. But I mean, this is my opinion, and this is something that also Cyclone DX is putting in the documentation.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Maybe I can also ask Alan for his opinion on that.
Yeah, sure. So Sarah was correct. That there are two different approaches, and the T-bomb is much more centralized, and it's an accompaniment to JSON that may, accompany a product. I suppose on the nature of vulnerability updates, it is an issue that came to light during the project execution. So what's going to happen is the T-bomb won't change, but within it will be a reference to an external a continuously updated vulnerability document, right? So we do have this external resource that continually updates. But of course, if you have your T-bomb committed to the blockchain, etc., you'd need to regenerate it probably every day or even every few hours as new vulnerabilities become discovered. So yes, it's something that we had to, I suppose, externalize in order for it to be functional.
Okay, thank you. I think we also have some further questions from the audience. What is about? So they are on a more higher level. So I think I would like to hear also the opinion from different speakers here. One is about the costs. So the question is actually, how do the various proposals emanating from the different projects increase or decrease the unit cost for IoT devices, and how will this impact the IoT market? So maybe Alan, you can start sharing your opinion on that, and then we can go around.
So I'll offer my opinion, as RESCALE doesn't very specifically deal with IoT, but I would say the unit cost per device would probably increase by onboarding a lot of additional security tooling. But then you do, and this is the case in general with security, you hopefully don't have to pay huge fines or have gigantic impact later. So in my experience, security by those that aren't involved in it is viewed as an unwanted cost. They want the minimum. They want the lowest cost. They want the least amount of security that they can get away with legally. And then they end up paying a lot more later when they get hacked, right? So I would say per unit cost goes up, but if it's done correctly, things like fines from hacks, etc., should become much more, a lesser concern. This would be my view.
Okay. So, Martin, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree that security doesn't come for free. But this is my sincere hope that legislation such as the CRA can help to motivate manufacturers to do the right thing and actually spend the required effort on building security into their devices. And of course, from the perspective of the telemetry project, what we are doing is trying to provide monitoring and testing tools that can help verify the security property of IoT devices.
Yeah, I see. So I think you can also try to have a different view on that. You cannot only consider the cost of the single units, but you can also the cost of the entire life cycle of the unit. So, and that's a question I think would then shift to whether the increased cost will be compensated by lower cost because of less security breaches, for instance, resulting from the higher security level of IoT devices. I think that's also a way to consider that, not only by considering the cost of the units, but also what cost they cost during their operational time. Okay, thanks a lot. Maybe we can also consider that from a third perspective. What do you think, Stefano? Would this have an impact on the market growth when the Cyber Resilience Act is actually implemented, and costs maybe get visible to the market? Would people or organizations refrain from buying the devices? Maybe that's also a way to buy devices before everything needs to be implemented?
No, I don't think that the solution is to buy in advance, right? So it's to actually, I mean, going back to what we touched before, right? So there is kind of a need rising from the CRA about security by design. There is another aspect of providing the security by default. So providing a secure configuration as the customer buy the product, right? What Alan was recalling as well, right? So, and that will also decrease the cost in the long run, right? And then is another part that is key is to keep an active stance to security, right? So we don't have to just certify the product once and then forget, consider that there is no evolution to the threat landscape, because that is definitely not the case, right? We know that things are changing.
Yeah.
So if there is this activity, right, from the manufacturer, right, and hopefully try to reuse some of the artifacts that they will generate anyway, right? We heard a lot about S-bomb, T-bomb, H-bomb, right? What we are doing with CERTIFY that Matteo was mentioning with the MAD file, right? All these are kind of artifacts that are already generated by the manufacturer, and that if they are likely be used to show to the certification authority that the product is still compliant, that is, again, not a way of raising the cost, right? Or not too much. Again, it doesn't come for free, as we said, but it's not really a huge revolution in terms of cost, but could be, on the other hand, a huge impact in terms of security posture that we are going to provide with the product. So definitely I will not buy the product just earlier because of that, but I will maybe wait to have people taking cybersecurity more seriously somehow.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So staying a bit on the market view, I think another question I would like to give to Björn is, what do you see? What is the awareness of the market with respect to the Cyber Resilience Act, its requirements, and the need to do anything regarding that?
That's a hard one, I would say. The awareness on the market. I say it depends on where you look. When I think about the events from Digital Europe or Bitkom in Germany, for instance, companies that are involved in these kinds of associations and information exchange events like webinars with this, you see that there is a good awareness, a good level of awareness on this is there. What does it mean? I have so many questions. What can I do? But in my opinion, would say that the amount of companies really involving themselves in these kind of initiatives is not very high. So I would say the awareness is there. There is something coming, but what it really means is a different thing.
Yeah.
So this is not a very satisfying answer, but I think this is the only one that I can give.
Yeah. So maybe another speaker has an opinion on that, or an experience he would like to share or she would like to share. So I think someone raised his hand, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that's me.
you. Yeah.
That's me. I mean, no, I don't want to take too long, but I could quote hundreds of examples, but in essence, I think this is like the question before on the cost. We ran like a year ago. We've been in a number of summits, and we keep saying the same thing after 1 year. If you talk to an SME and you ask them, "What is your question about the CRA?" Their question is, "What is CRA?" And if you talk to CISOs of large organizations, that's the reality of the market. They're there to put out fires, and maybe now they're really breaking their head with the NIS2. And they will say CRA, well, when it comes, it comes. You have a different approach with and that's why with CERTIFY it's interesting as well with manufacture the design products, because they're thinking ahead, right? So they realize that even if there's a grace period, they need to start working now about this. But I mean, there's no denial that all these regulation, they add some extra burden. But the point is that we should try to shift the perspective here toward more the carrot than the stick, right? Try to see the positive effect and spillover effect that come from applying this regulation. And again, about reusing evidence, at some point, some people might go, I will go and buy only CRA compliant product because it will make me easier to be compliant to my product of the CRA. So the thing is, there could be with time some positive effect coming out of this. For sure, the awareness is a big effort happening now, and as has been stated before, if you go to these conferences, you see basically the bubble, you see the tip of the iceberg. But the truth is, there's a big market there that needs to adapt to this, and there's a big effort that needs to happen, and a lot of tooling that out of this project should come out to support the market adapt to it.
Yeah. So what do you think? What should the Commission or maybe organizations such as EXO do for increasing the awareness?
Oh, wow. By the way, while you were saying that, I just realized that I spoke to another large company recently, and they told me my clients are starting to asking me if I am CRA compliant. And basically, you can't prove that you're CRA compliant yet. I mean, we're still waiting for the harmonized standard and so on. So what we can do, I mean, we're doing a lot. We're doing within CERTIFY, we're doing webinars, we're doing info days in a while. We as EXO, I mean, I think everyone is talking about the CRA. I guess it's good. We need to keep calm and keep evangelizing this. Maybe I don't have personally an opinion on how we can reach more audience. I would say probably provide concrete examples is what would speak more to the wider public of SMEs and smaller organizations. That's why in CERTIFY we try to concentrate on piloting things, because it's just you go beyond just general concept, but see how things apply in practice. So piloting to me has always been a good practice for awareness, but very open question to me.
Okay, fine. Any other who want to share his or her opinion on that? Market awareness and how to increase it with respect to the Cyber Resilience Act. Albert.
Yeah, maybe I should not bring this point up, but Carla, you provide frameworks for software developers that include already a focus on the security. So helping to speed up this process of implementing cyber secure solutions, not just the technology, but also the application layer on top, it will help the spin-off of implementing the CRA. I mean, it's, as you said, Matteo, it's a complex matter. It's wide, it's big, it's a huge elephant in the room. And if you start eating it by the tail, you will never come to the nose. So you need to find a way to digest this in compartmental blocks. And here it helps that hardware that's already secured by design, application development processes, but you can expand that maybe Carla, help to define cybersecure applications, will bring it to scale. Sorry, I'm I'm speaking for you, but I think the combination is the work that we need to find here.
Well, our techniques are at programming level, but I think they are crucial, of course, because if your software is not correct, then you are open your software, creating vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
But there are some issues. So, for instance, I mentioned the information flow. These are techniques that are quite heavy. So your component is going to be slower if you're using these techniques. So there's still a lot of research to do at the programming level to have this secured by design. That is quite difficult to achieve. We are tackling a few aspects. We are not yet providing security by design. I don't know if that clarified it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Carla, also for your answer on Albert's remark. Also about
Bjorn raised and
Matteo, please.
no, before me, there's another hand raised.
Yeah, if I may, just it is nice to hear so many good inputs already, and there are a lot of things where I would definitely agree. So let's see if I can sort it out. Because what I wanted to say is with Matteo, I really liked your statement about the pilots, because this is why I showed these parts with the kind of marketing tool, pick up roles, personas, and describe what they do, because we try to describe user journeys connected with pilots to really show what is going on, how can you use it, and not tell them, here is something where you can do continuous compliance. And smaller cloud providers who should adopt this would then go, huh? So we really try to break it down to user journeys that you can relate to. So thanks for the statement, Matteo. And something on the awareness, what I think about when I hear the statement from Albert is maybe it's an opportunity even for the EU level, some direction générales to come up with not talking about this is a new act that we enforce, but to some extent it might even be some innovation enabler. Let's see it as kind of leverage, because what we do here in this project or in these projects is think about new ways, new solutions, new secure design for IoT devices. We think about how to set up different processes to make this possible. We talk about trustworthiness, about transparency, all these things, and we come up with innovative solutions. And this is because of these regulations. They are there for a reason. And I would say maybe for the broader acceptance, it's a way to talk about how this can foster progress and innovation. Maybe I'm too naive, but I think this is some kind of point of view to look at it.
If I can react to that, unless there's other hand raised. I think that's exactly the point, right? So when you approach from this, I mean, I'm learning a lot from what I'm seeing. I'm not technical, by the way, even though I work in the IT industry, and that's why I have very nice technical consortium working with us. But when we talk about among this type of audience, I think we see that security as we say, we see the benefit of security. Unfortunately, when you talk to the market, when CRA comes, I mean, if you think as an entrepreneur, your problem is to keep selling things on the European market, affixing the CE mark. That's all you want to know. How do I achieve that? So you see that more as a responsibility liability problem, whereas the shift in perspective that you rightly say, Bjorn, we should show that this is in your interest. This could make the European market something where not only it's worth marketing in, but there's a higher security level of the digital product in there. This is a shift of perspective. It can only not happen because we wish for it. There's awareness indeed, but we need to find incentives for that. And again, to shift the market perspective of seeing a law simply as something you need to abide to rather than something you need to improve the ecosystem. But it is exactly spot on, in my opinion. We need to find that way of passing that message. And sorry, I wanted to say something that on something that Albert said before. To me, it's also very interesting the fact that when we look at the Cyber Resilience Act, we talk about essential requirements. So again, for the legislator, when you see the law, these are essential. We're not asking for rocket science. But maybe many of you say, okay, security by design in practice, we have not achieved yet. So you see there's a disconnect with the technical level and the legal level. What is interesting in the Cyber Resilience Act is that the way I read it is that the regulation says, okay, and that's fine, let's implement these essential requirements, but there's a list of products, or based on some security assessment you made, we want you to really prove that you have done and implemented your security requirements. So there's a sort of modularity in the way you prove the compliance to the CRA. And again, this is not a technical problem to me. It's more like a compliance problem, but it's linked with the technical problem. So I think these events or further events we're going to do should really help bridging this gap of I wouldn't say communication, but of connection between the conformity and technical world.
Okay, thanks a lot. I think we are now already at the end of this webinar. The time passed already very fast, so I'm a bit surprised. I would like to thank all of the speakers here and also the participants of the webinar for providing insights into the projects, providing their opinions, and raising interesting questions. For those who might miss something because they might have joined later or so, you can find the recording of the webinar later on at the project of the DOS website, including the presentation. So if you have any questions or would like to see anything you might have missed, look at our website. You can also contact our speakers here afterward. They provided their contact data. So you can stay also connected to also the progress of the project. And I think we can also continue discussions asynchronously independent from the webinar. So thanks to all of you. And I think we will still have some the journey ahead of us to implement the Cyber Resilience Act and provide methodologies for that. Okay, then I wish you all a nice afternoon and see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.